Okay, again.
That's good.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another season of Finding Your Realm. It's been a while since we've been on. A little bit on my part. I've been away having to take care of other matters and personal things. But I'm really excited to be back to have a conversation with more of our amazing and interesting guests doing things that are unconventional, game changing, and hopefully adding so much amazing value to your life and your day to day self care. Today, we have the pleasure of having Andrew Forman, who's the CEO of GIVZ, GIVZ. If you haven't heard of GIVZ, today is your very lucky day because you get to hear directly from Andrew. And I think that they're going to hopefully change your way of shopping and also open up so much opportunity for yourself, either as a brand owner, as a consumer, or as another person in the e-commerce and tech space. So, Andrew, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, it'd be really great to hear from you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. Really appreciate it and excited to be here. A little bit about me. So I am an East Coast guy through and through. So grew up in New Jersey, live here in New York now. Have two little babies, 1.5 and 3.5. And so that is taking up the personal life pretty much fully. I do still try to play some basketball here and there, or some sports whenever I can get that in. But overall, that's the personal side. And then on the professional side, I've been running GIVZ now for quite some time. We really pivoted the business, which we may get into later, but pivoted the business about 2 years ago into what we do now. And very excited to chat through all that.
So, you and I spoke, I would say about a week ago, just about like your background and how you ended up in this space where, as it was described, you're democratizing the way that people are doing giving. So, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Like, how does a person get from, let's say college to, hey, I'm going to change the way that giving is done, like across an industry?
Yeah, so I guess going through that. So college was upstate New York, middle of nowhere, a small college called Hamilton College. And while I was there at the end of my senior year, a friend of mine actually went. So I was slated to go do investment banking, which I did for 6 years, which is a long time. But while I was a senior at Hamilton, a friend of mine went to Jamestown, Ghana, came back and said, hey, like I just, similar to the Pencil of Promise story, she said, hey, these kids were asking me for, she's with an NYU study abroad program. She said the kids in Jamestown were asking for books. It's the only thing they were asking for. Never money, never food, just books. And so she said, I need to start a nonprofit and you need to help me. And I said, all right, let's do this. And so I was the math guy. And so I was the treasurer and on the board. And so we started this nonprofit out of our senior year dorm rooms. We ended up, having a small budget, somewhere in $20,000 to $30,000 budget for annual budget for the charity. But we were, a tiny nonprofit in New York City, and we did that for 5 years. And I was trying to figure out, how do we shipped a ton of books to Jamestown, Ghana, and that was really the point. And sent the CEO over there a few times to make sure that the books were in good condition and being read to the children, and there was some sort of after school type of program when there were NYU study abroad students there. So that was really fulfilling on the one hand. On the professional side, I was working all crazy hours in investment banking, to pay the bills on my side. And so this was like my yin and yang. And so when I went back to business school, I really wanted to try to combine those two things, not have them so separated, and say, hey, is there a business that can do well and do good at the same time? Is kind of the cliche way of saying it, but is there a business that you can make a ton of money while doing real good? And we ultimately came up with the initial plan for GIVZ, which then pivoted into what we do now, which is donation incentives for brands, allowing brands to run something like, hey, spend $60 on H&M, get $10 to give to a charity of your choice. And for me, the exciting part there, for H&M, the exciting part is that a lot more people spend $60 or more when you make an offer like this. For me, the exciting part is that, so that we can get more customers. But two, now there's a bunch of people that have $10 to give to whatever charity they want that may have otherwise never given before, or just forgot that, they really did care about this one charity. And now they're forced to think about, what is it that I care about, to give this $10 to. And so that's what I'm excited about now.
That's super exciting, because I think for a lot of people, philanthropy is a really big word, and it also usually carries a lot of zeros, but a little bit does go a long way.
Totally.
So for you, like, I guess just rolling back your story is, you started out, a friend said, "Hey, I need to do this thing and you have to help me." And you said, "Yes." So a little bit just about your personality, like, what is that thing that you say, "Okay, Andrew, I got to get up and do the thing." Like, I have to be that catalyst.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody's passionate about something, I like to be a yes guy, right? And say, yeah, I think, as long as it's not hurting anybody, that's like my general rule, right? As long as there's not hurting anybody, there's no path to hurting anybody. Somebody's passionate about it, let's make it happen. Let's do it, right? If you want to play basketball at 6:30 in the morning, as long as I'm not, my kid isn't waking up and terrorizing my wife at that time, then yes, I will get up and play. But yeah, I really feed off of other people's energy and their passion. And I can get passionate about pretty much anything, especially when it's doing something good in the world.
So with that said, you mentioned basketball, and I know that you are an avid basketball player. How do you fit it into your schedule? You're a dad of two, you're running this company. I think you're still doing some charitable work outside of your day-to-day work. How do you factor it in?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think I just succumb to the fact that, like, I'm gonna, I have a once a week basketball league that I try to play in, but I'm going to miss half those games, right? Like, that's just, it's going to happen. Something from work's going to come up. Something with the kids is going to come up. But I also just have a very supportive family. And I think that is extremely important from starting with my wife, but then also my in-laws and my parents are just amazing in terms of helping. First of all, they're close by. Not everybody has their parents close by. We have the parents close by, and not only are they close by, they're more than willing to jump in. They want to watch the kids. They want to come help. And so if I can have my parents babysit while I run, my wife's at a work meeting and a work dinner, and I'm going to go play basketball, we can make that happen. And with no begrudges or anything, like that from my parents, and I think, or her parents for that matter. And so it's like really, really helpful to have the community help here.
So, with community, basketball, of course, is a team sport. There are inordinate amount of studies about the value of doing things in teams, right? They say one of the most natural things that we as humans do, but with our emphasis on the podcast being so much about like self-care, do you think that you use basketball as like your self-care language?
Absolutely. That is what my wife can tell if I've gone a few weeks in a row without playing any sort of physical sport. That is from, I played football and basketball, but really football, tackle football with pads from third grade straight through the end of college, right? And so if I can't get out there and get that energy out in some way, shape, or form, she's like, "You gotta go play basketball tomorrow morning. Like, you have to do something," right? Because you can feel it just kind of building up. And so for me, that is the self-care thing that I do for myself, and try to take it as seriously as I can, and try to play at least once a week.
That's really great to hear, because I feel like, unfortunately, a lot of our guests have been women, and we all talk about self-care. Some women are very, very into their routines. Some people are not so into their routines, but it's good to hear from like a male or another perspective that self-care is an integral part of how you keep your entire world going. Do
Totally.
you feel afterward that you're maybe just a little bit version of yourself going back to work and back to your family and back to things like this?
Definitely better, like absolutely better from having played, before having played something can set me off a lot easier than after having played basketball and, or football or whatever it is. But just having done something, run around, even if it's just get a workout in, just actually, do something for yourself, feel like you can let things roll a little bit easier, right? Something that might have set you off earlier in the day. Now, you've worked out, you're feeling good. You come back and you say, you know what? I understand where that person's coming from, and I can think more level-headedly about things.
So I know that we've kind of bounced around all over the place, but in the vein of community, you have a strong relationship, hopefully, with your parents and your wife's parents. Your wife is an integral part of of course, what keeps the entire person that you are going. But I've read here and there that you are really close to your wife and you call her like your unofficial CMO to the GIVZ. If you could share a little bit, if she's comfortable with that, of course, share a little bit about that and like how that relationship as a team, professionally, personally, like helps to drive things for you.
Yeah, it's actually been interesting for us. So when I started out, she was an interim CMO for a bunch of different companies, then turned investor. And she's an entrepreneur herself. She had started and sold her business way back when, from 2009, ran a business till 2014 when she sold it, then became the CMO of a bunch of different companies, and then turned investor. And so when I started GIVZ, she was, in our Facebook ads and like actually, was acting as an interim CMO for us. We got to the point where it was like great working together, but then we were like, you know what? We started to grow. She was really, she had raised her own venture capital fund. She had a lot of work going on. We were, doing stuff. She was only working, at night on this with me. And it was like, okay, we need to hire somebody for a full-time gig here. And actually we should not talk about this anymore. It's that like the part-time piece isn't working. So we actually said, all right, church and state, we're not going to talk about work, at night. Let's try to be present with each other and not just talk about work, because we're in a similar space at this point. She's on one side of the coin, I'm on the other, as investor and entrepreneur. And we could just talk about that all the time. So we said, all right, let's not talk about that. Also, we had kids, and it was like, okay, now we're just talking about the kids all the time anyway. But recently, about 2 months ago, we were at a wedding, and so we actually away from the kids for a second, and she started talking about work. I started talking about work, and we were like, oh, we had kind of missed this. Like, it's actually nice to talk about work. So I think it's just going to go in cycles, and talk about it when it's helpful, but not get too overly involved like we started to.
Well, that's really good to know. It's always good to have that thing where you can brace yourself, because sometimes, like, especially, as an entrepreneur, you just start talking, and you know how it is. Like, you get so wrapped up in the pieces and just the elements of what you think will be successful. And our partners, they got to deal with the brunt of it all.
They do. Well, it's funny for us. Like, I'm always like, oh man, like she's getting pitched by entrepreneurs all day, every day, and it's only the best stuff, right? And whereas like when I talk to her, it's like only the worst stuff, because I have to talk about the best stuff all day. So I want to talk about the worst stuff with my wife, and then she's like, oh man, like I'm seeing all these companies that all I see is the good stuff and all I see is the bad stuff from your side. And it's like, it's a weird dichotomy that she has to deal with there. But yeah, I'm very, very lucky to have somebody that, first of all, understands this world and can provide really good advice and intel as I'm like trying to think through things.
So with that said, for people who, of course, this is the first time they're hearing of GIVZ, we just want to take just a second to acknowledge that Andrew is crushing it. They've raised $3 million recently. And I feel like as a successful business leader, I'm always curious to hear, like, what are the traits or what are those things that you say, like, a person has to have to succeed in business?
Yeah, I mean, in startup world, I think it is maybe, unique versus, if you're going to go work and be successful at a big corporation or something like that. I think it is very different. And I think, the number one thing that you need as a founder is just resilience and grit. And I'm sure that that's what people, talk about all the time. But it's just never a straight line to success. And so you're going to get knocked down a ton of times. And it's going to go up, and the highs are going to be really high and the lows are going to be really low. And you got to be able to deal with that and stay even keeled through it all. And I'd say you need to have a bit of almost delusion in some sense of like, no, this is my vision. This is going to work. And you have to really, really push on that and not let anything sidetrack you. And then you have to be able to say like, okay, I was dead set on this for a month. And now it's like, okay, should I be pivoting? No. Okay, great. Then let's keep going for the next month. And then decide like, I did that for too long, right? I did 2.5 years of building a business that about a year in, I should have known, I should have pivoted, right? So that extra year and a half haunted me. And so then for the next 6 months after I pivot the business, I was always like, oh, should I be pivoting? Should I be pivoting? Should I be pivoting? And like all day, every day. And that's not good either. So you have to find that balance. But at the end of the day, you just have to be able to say, no, I get that this is crappy right now, but I'm going to keep pushing because something good is on the other side.
I completely agree. I feel like especially during that COVID, I'll call it a COVID season because it just never ended.
Yes.
During that COVID season, I think as in business, everyone was talking about pivot. And then I started questioning, okay, pivot to what? And then those are the things that kind of keep you up at night. They almost haunt you depending on how obsessed you become with what and when to pivot.
Totally.
So I know that, like you said, GIVZ, you ran this business a certain way, and then you decided to take, your own advice to a certain extent, trust your gut and pivot. Can you describe what GIVZ was prior to and how you would describe it today?
Yeah. So today GIVZ is donation incentives for brands. So the story I always tell is, so the idea would be, hey, spend $60 or more, get $10 to give to a charity of your choice. So if the in-store version of this would be, you go to a CVS and right now you go in, let's say the idea was you were going to spend $12 in CVS. You were going in to buy toilet paper or something, a bunch of rolls of toilet paper. So it's $12 and 30 cents. And so you come out and you check out and they're like, hey, do you want to donate an extra 70 cents? And you're like, hey, I was just in here to buy toilet paper. Like now you're like thinking to yourself, maybe I just buy this on Amazon so that they don't like hit me up for this 70 cents. It's kind of annoying. And I've talked to a lot of people and they don't like that. Some people do it, but they don't like CVS for it. They're like, this is kind of annoying. I like that it gets money to charity, but it's not a reason people aren't like, oh, I need to go into CVS because I need to donate that 70 cents that I wasn't thinking about. Right. And so, GIVZ has flipped that on its head and basically said, hey, if you were to walk into CVS and CVS was to say, have a sign in CVS that said, if you spend $50 or more today in CVS, we're going to give you $5 to give to whatever charity you care about. And so now John Doe walks into CVS planning to just buy $12 worth of toilet paper. He goes in and he's like, you know what? Actually, I do need a whole bunch of other stuff and I could easily spend $50 in CVS. And in fact, he ends up spending $100 in CVS. And so he checks out and CVS is like, hey, here's $5 to give to whatever charity you want. Even if he donates that $5, CVS still made $95 instead of the $12 that they were going to make before. And so that is the value prop that we're trying to give. And it sent $5 real to charity instead of 70 cents. And so that is the win all around that we're really, really excited about. And that's what we should have been doing the whole time. Prior to that, I had envisioned GIVZ as a direct consumer Venmo for charity app. So it was an app in both Apple and Android app stores where people could donate to charities that they wanted to give to, donate their own money, and eventually earn credits from brands. And then we realized, no, the earning credits from brands is the only way to go here.
Yeah, it's so hard. And this, I'm going to pause for anyone who just listens for the self-care fact, but this is the section where we get really into like that business talk. It is so hard to get people motivated about rewards programs. Maybe
yes.
10 years ago, yeah, it was so cool. You collected all these points and these points led to dollars and those dollars led to points. However, in 2022, I think it makes a lot more sense for you to be having the effort being put in to say, I'd rather spend the $100, give the five whole dollars, as you said, to like that charity that I'm so passionate about, compared to me rounding up pennies. You know, the whole rounding up pennies makes me think more of like acorns. Remember, I don't know if you remember that.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the roundup system, and now people feel. I don't think they're as akin to like the acorns model more than, hey, I want to do more, so find a way to incentivize me, and I will.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. Like in this case, the $5 is coming from CVS. It's not even coming from the person. I mean, it is because the person ended up buying a whole bunch more stuff, but the person's getting those items, right, that they either wanted anyway, or they just forgot. Like, oh yeah, of course I needed toothpaste, and I just forgot about it, right? And so like now you buy that, or I needed whatever. CVS sells everything, so you can go in and do that. But that's the beauty of what it is that we're doing now. Is CVS would be happy to donate $5 if people who were going to spend 12 now spend 50. They'd be happy to donate $5 every time that happens. And so how can we power that and really, again, ultimately democratize giving, because it's personal. It's, you get to pick $5 that you care to send to the charity you care about. I get to pick $5 to send to the charity that I care about. So CVS isn't just picking some random charity. Now, CVS can say, hey, here's the charities, or 2 or 3 or 4 charities that we really care about. And if you don't care about one in particular, you may as well choose one of theirs. Great. But if you have one that you care about, you can give it to that.
And in the long term, this is just creating like a positive, like net positive marketing and net positive ROI.
Yeah, so it creates short-term ROI in the sense that people there, you can see. So in our case studies, you can see that the percentage of people that walk into that store and spend over $50 when that sign is there is far greater than the percentage of people that spend over $50 normally, right? Like that's the first and foremost short-term ROI that you can see from it. The long-term ROI is people that actually spent over the $50, donated the money. Those people spend 3, 4, 5, 6 times more on average over the course of a year than people that didn't do that. And is that because the people that they're just higher quality customers, right? They're not like just searching for a discount and then bouncing. They are spending more money with you, and then they are more likely to repeat because you gave them money to give to whatever charity they care about most. And now they see that action and they want to continue that motion. And then the last thing is that it's brand building as well, right? Because now customers can say to their friends, like, yeah, I actually got $5. I gave it to the local charity food bank here. And it's like, oh, that's really cool. Maybe now that word of mouth spreads.
And for you, how did you even come up with this idea? I'm gonna just ask it directly, right? Like, what was that thing? Like, did you go to sleep one night and then you woke up in the middle of the night, like many entrepreneurs do, and you said, "Aha! Like, huzzah! I have that thing."
So this is where, so we were running the Venmo for charity piece, right? And I knew in my heart of hearts that it wasn't working, and I didn't know what to do. And we went on vacation as a full family, and I actually remember being in the living room of the Airbnb that we were at, and basically talking to my wife about, like, I think, it's not working. I was like, but I think there's something here with corporates that could be really interesting. And she was the one who said, hey, I have a bunch of portfolio companies that I can introduce you to tomorrow. And so while I was on vacation, and again, like allowing me to do that, and just being from the space that we were in, where it was like, yeah, you got to talk to these companies tomorrow. And I was like, okay. And so I talked to a couple of companies, and 2 of them said, yeah, like we want to test this. Let's test this. And so we tested on Facebook, sign up now, get $50 off. A test, B test, sign up now, get $50 to give to charity. And the $50 to give to charity performed 20% better. And we did the same thing with a handbag company where they sent an A/B tested email. Half the people got $40 off. Half the people got $40 to give to charity. The people that got $40 to give to charity performed 18% better than the people that got $40 off. And we were like, whoa, this is crazy psychological behavior. We need to pivot the business.
That again, as an entrepreneur, it's so exciting to hear just the path to get there. A lot of people think you're on vacation. I'm not going to break the rule of like no work during vacation, but we all know we do it.
Right. Right.
Acted upon it, and it actually worked out. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Congratulations to you.
Thanks. No, that was it was. I mean, it was tough times at that time, right? But yeah, it's good.
Yeah, but doesn't it make you also think, yeah, it's tough times, but people are still actively wanting to find ways to give back? It's fascinating.
Totally. This has restored. The funny part is it has restored a little bit of faith in humanity for me in terms of like, hey, it moves the needle. People want to feel good, right? And I still feel like it. There is still some self-serving piece of this, but they like feel like okay. Do I really need this $300 pair of shoes? No, but if it comes with $40 to give to charity, yes. and I'm okay with that. Like that. I like that. I'm glad that is motivating. And I'm glad that the $40 is going to a charity that needs it.
I'm going to ask the big question. How much do you think that GIVZ could donate in the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so we've already crossed the $1 million donated threshold, but we are on a mission in the next 5 years to 1,000x that and get to $1 billion donated. That is what our mission is. And once we get there, we'll hopefully make it multiples of that. But that is the goal. We really want to send as much money as we possibly can to as many deserving charities as we possibly can.
And your charity base, is it all of the charities that we could think of? Are there a limited number of charities in the community?
So we're working to make it any charity that you can think of that's registered with the IRS and in good standing and has their 501c3 license. But right now we are partnered with the PayPal Giving Fund. And so there are about 175,000 different charities in the US that you can give to through GIVZ and therefore, and through the PayPal Giving Fund. It's easy to enroll. It's free to enroll. But we are working to add all the rest of the amazing charities as well.
That's so incredible. Have you found it? Well, I'm guessing, are you having still those sleepless nights? Or are you sleeping a little bit better knowing that the pivot helped to drive this wonderful change in the world?
The pivot definitely helped, but at every stage, it only gets harder. And so, you think it's like, oh man, I'm never going to raise this money. And you have dreams about trying to raise the money, and everybody I dream about GIVZ 2 out of every 3 nights, which is brutal because I used to just dream about basketball and football, and it was great. And now it's like all about GIVZ. And so, at first you're like, okay, I need to raise this money. And then you're like, oh, I'm never going to raise the money. And then you do raise the money and you're like, oh, you feel relief for like a second. And then you're like, actually, wait, now I have to like spend this money and then go raise the next round. And it's just, you're only getting to higher and higher peaks that have higher and higher fall rates if you don't make it. So it's tough, and it has not gotten easier yet. I'll let you know if and when it ever gets easier, but from what I've heard, it doesn't.
I like how optimistic you are in that space. It's like I used to have a manager that used to say, to quote Biggie Smalls, like more money, more problems.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'd like to think on a personal level that won't be an issue, but I'm nowhere close to that. And as a startup CEO, you're not making a ton of money at all, regardless of how well or poorly the startup is doing. In either sense, you're not doing great on the personal level. But it's something, it's a passion.
For sure. I feel with that passion, that's what really fuels you. I think as a startup CEO, it doesn't matter if you've had like your best year or the best day on record, 5 seconds later, you're thinking about all the other things that need to happen. So, there, as you said, that personal high happens and then reality kicks back in.
Yeah. If you have your best day ever today, that means that tomorrow is just that much tougher, right? You got to have the best day ever tomorrow. You're going to have to beat what you did today. And so it just keeps getting higher, and that builds on itself, compounds.
For sure. So we're on the space of you changing the world, and those sometimes drawbacks of like being on that high. What do you do for yourself, whether it's basketball or something else, when you're experiencing that low of, oh, S word, like, what am I going to do next?
Yeah, I think for me, I, I'm more of an extrovert than an introvert, and so I like to talk to people. So if I'm really feeling down, I'll just like call a bunch of people in my community, whether it's friends, whether it's family. Um, a sale goes poorly. Like I've called, my best friend to tell him that, a sale fell through, and he's like, dude, I'm at work. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I just had to tell somebody this, and I'm like, this is what I could have done better, et cetera, et cetera. I've called my parents to tell them about it, like anybody that'll listen or that has to listen, I will, I'll do that. Whenever I'm feeling down, talking to people has been a helpful resource for me.
Are there any other things that you do or that like technology that has helped you in any way? I know a lot of founders tell me that they're using different apps for like meditation or guidance, or I have a friend who gets like text every couple of hours that is like positive statements or positive affirmations. Is there anything that
Interesting.
you do for yourself?
I don't have anything like that. I have heard, great things about. There's a friend of mine runs a company that has like and I actually do want to try this out, but like a work music kind of deal. So if you listen to music during work, this is what you should be listening to. If you need music to go to sleep, this is the type of music you should be listening to, and it kind of gets to learn what you like and start to adapt to that. So I think that would actually be something that's pretty interesting. But in terms of meditation, like I said, I'm more like, I'd rather talk to somebody for 10 minutes than be in my own thoughts for 10 minutes at the moment. That's how I generally feel. Although again, like I like playing some sort of team sport, and that'll take my mind off everything. And that's the best for me.
Well, it's good to know that that's like your way to reset. I think everyone has like their own like unique blend, whether it's like talking to a friend, playing basketball. I have a friend who like every couple of weeks she gets a massage and that's like her block off time. The phone
There you
turns
go.
off. Everyone has their own little thing.
Definitely.
So, now I'm going to go into like deeper, more introspective questions. So forgive me now.
All good.
So I think a lot of the times, especially in like the e-com space, the technology space, there are the really, really positives, those highs, those things like GIVZ that are actively changing the world, right? You've already gone through the step of like validation. That's great. Where do you think like the industry of giving is going? And like, what are some of those drawbacks that, we don't readily talk about in technology? What are the things that are, bothering you about the space?
About e-commerce or about giving or about both?
Maybe separately because e-commerce is kind of its own thing in a certain way.
Yeah. I mean, and so which one do you want me to cover? E-commerce first? Yeah. So on e-commerce, it's tough, right? I think first of all, the initial surge of the pandemic or the first season of the pandemic made, e-commerce accelerate like firecrackers, right? Like it was crazy. Everybody's at home. Everybody's buying stuff from home. They have more income because they're not going out. And so therefore they are spending. And so of course there's going to be a little bit of fall off in spending, or maybe if there's not fall off in spending, the growth rate is of course going to fall off. And then there's like bounce back, push back from that. Like, oh, this is not, so e-commerce is dead. And it's like, no, e-commerce is not dead. It's not going anywhere. It was step functioned up and now it's going to continue to grow. And I think that, that narrative is always kind of tough for me where people are like, oh, e-commerce is dying. Is like, it is not dying. It is just not growing at the fastest possible rate, pandemic induced rate, that happens. So that's something that is always interesting to me. I think what I don't like about, I guess, maybe, I don't know about e-commerce or just technology in general, as I have these two little kids that are growing up, screen time is just a real thing. And I talk to, classmates of theirs or even colleagues of mine that have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year olds. And it's like, all they do is sit in front of their computer or their iPad or their phone. And, that's a scary thought to me, and trying to figure out like, what can we do? what is something that can get people back outside playing? Pandemic certainly didn't help. And so what is it that we can do to get out of this virtual world and into the real world? Is something that I think about a lot, but haven't had any good answers yet.
I think it's a really great way to answer it, because I think everyone, especially, so I'll answer, I'll say it in two respects. On one end, we saw, in at least, my e-commerce business that surged during the pandemic. It was great. It was euphoric, right? For most people in e-commerce.
Totally.
Wonderful. And then that started to drop off, and you start freaking out because you're so used to seeing that rise. Okay, that's over. But we should be so grateful that people are back outside and have the opportunity to go back out and live their life. So I can't really sit here and dwell on that, because the latter is us being back at home for months, and I don't think anybody's gonna do well after that. Yeah. And then the other side is, to your point, when it comes to young people and getting them energized and excited about going back out into the world, meeting new people, not feeling social anxiety. And I think for my team and I as a brand, we think a lot about like how not to fuel and basically like monopolize on people's social anxiety. Like, that's not okay. I think a lot of brands right now, if you look at some of their content, they're hovering in that space where it's like you're encouraging people to just be inside and to stay home and not go out and experience the world. And that's not healthy either.
No.
It doesn't help your brand grow. But I think we're somewhat in the same space where it's like, how do we get people back outside? And how do we get people excited and energized to say, continue to want to give more, remember the brand and their shopping experience, but also go live, and feel safe while experiencing the trials and tribulations of life. But for your very little babies, I think your oldest is like 2 or 3?
Oldest is 3.5. Yeah, 3.5, going on 4 pretty soon. Wild.
Is it 4 going on 40? Are they ramped up and ready to go?
Oh yeah. So my older one is female. So she's my daughter is just, I mean, it's crazy. She's a real human being at this point, right? And my younger one's a son, and they are pretty gendered in that sense. Like, he was moving and walking way earlier, but like talking way later, and she was talking way earlier and moving later. But I mean, she is everything's a negotiation. They talk about the terrible 2s, but 3s or three-nager is real. She is, if I say, hey, you can have 2, Halloween just came up. So, I said, you can have 2 pieces of candy. She's like, I want 2 of those and I want 2 of these. And I was like, no, I just said you could have 2, right? I said you could have 2. That's it. She's like, all right, well, then we just meet in the middle, 3. And I was like, smart. And I want to encourage that in some sense, right? But I also want to be like, no. So it's parenting also is only going to get harder. I am very nervous about that. Like, as we go, right? I mean, if she's going to negotiate, I want her to negotiate in the future, right? Like, one day her salary, if she's like, hey, I'm going to make X, they tell her Y, she says X, and she's like trying to negotiate for higher salary. I want that. I want her to see that have worked in the past. So I'm like, all right, should I give her these 3 candies? And then I'm like, I'm overthinking this, but it's it is something that we think about in terms of how do we empower these kids to not worry so much about what people think about them on social media, and they're going to be really growing up. I talked to a friend the other day about this, who said, this, like, the 10, 11, 12, 13, 10 to 15-year-olds now really, really got it the worst in terms of, like, they grew up with social media and TikTok, and they really grew up with it. And then the pandemic hit them, so they had to stay inside, and like only made it worse. He's like, I hope by the time our kids are like 6 years, 6, 7, 8 years from now, hopefully there's some sort of reversal or some sort of working itself out that they're not so reliant on TikTok for their lives.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think my concern is like a lot of times your For You page helps you to unfortunately form your opinions of the world. And my
Totally.
opinion might be very, I'll use the word faction or
Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
you don't want you. I think especially with young people or impressionable minds or developing minds, you don't want them to think that it's all the For You page. There are other parts that are joyful and happy, and there are some sad parts, but like you have to go experience them
Yeah.
compared to allowing, with TikTok in the comments be the only way that does it.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah. So, with that said, shifting a little bit to social impact, like, what do you think will be the legacy of GIVZ way into the future, where this is going to be the natural version and the natural progression for
Yeah.
giving and retail sales?
Yeah, my hope is that, as bad as, as much as we just talked about, hopefully people are outside and not worrying about social media. If they are going to be on social media, and they are, and I'm sure it's not going away fully, and they are going to figure out, okay, hey, this is what I stand for, and like, okay, great, show it by doing something good in that realm, right? And so what I ultimately see GIVZ going is that, first of all, this will be table stakes in the next couple of years across every single brand. Every brand wants to move away from discounts. They want to weave in social impact. So every single brand should be offering some sort of spend threshold, or certain products you purchase them, or with every purchase you get 1% to give to a charity that you care about. Some sort of basic everyday offer that has a donation incentive woven into it. I think we will see that in the next 5 years. On top of that, I think the charities are going to start to get involved and see that this is actually a sustainable way for them to get revenue in the door and get money in the door each and every single month. And so they can say something like, hey, if you're going to go to Target anyway, go during this period, spend the $60, get $10, and give it to us, right? And so now the charities start to promote the brands, and now it's a acquisition driver for the brands, and a real partnership starts to get formed between brands and charities. And that's something that is just harder than it needs to be these days, and I'm hoping that we can bridge that gap.
And this is just my own curiosity. Do you have any packages or something that you'll roll out for like Black Friday? Because it's such a big opportunity for people to shop, but also to give.
Totally, we do. So there are a ton of brands that are turning on for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and so the pitch there is like, hey, like when somebody buys something at 40% off, 50% off, 60% off from your brand, even if it's Black Friday, Cyber Monday, I can almost guarantee you that they are not coming back to shop full price ever. Right? Like, that's it. I bought something 50% off from this brand. I am not buying full price that thing ever. And so that has been felt by brands for a long time, but now you can see it if you use Peel Insights or Tyto Analytics or any sort of analytics company, and it says like, hey, show me the customers that bought for my Black Friday Cyber Monday sale last year and show me their lifetime value. It's like 2x lower, 3x lower than the rest of your customers. This is terrible. So like, how can we not have that kind of stigma of 50% off? What if you did 25% off plus 25% to give to a charity of your choice? Same math in terms of what you're going to make. Actually, you're going to end up making a lot more, but that's neither here nor there. The most important piece is only 25% off in terms of like, when I pay for I don't pay $50 for a $100 item, I pay $75, but then I get $25 to give to a charity of my choice. That's new. That's interesting. That's something that makes me feel good about the brand. And now I paid $75 for a $100 item. Okay, now, but I also got $25 to give to a charity that I care about. Now I get retargeted in March, and I say, hey, we noticed that you donated to the Special Olympics. Do you want to make another purchase for $100 or more and get $25 again to give to a charity? And now that person's going to buy again at full price this time and get another $25 to give to a charity that they care about. But that's the win. That's much better than somebody spending $50 and never buying from you again.
For sure. So I know that we're coming up closer to like the 45-minute mark, and I want to introduce this thing called rapid fire questions. I'm speaking a little faster because I want to hopefully we can get these done fast, and you can speak as openly and honestly and as authentically as you are. Question number one, if you could have breakfast, lunch, or dinner with anyone in history ever, who would it be?
Man, so I have two answers to this one. First one is, so somebody asked me early on, like, who if we tagged somebody, maybe they'd actually respond. And I was like, you know what? I feel like Mark Cuban might actually respond. So I picked Mark Cuban. And so that's one. And then my childhood favorite athlete was Tim Brown, a receiver for the then Oakland Raiders. And I'd love to chat with him.
Wonderful. Love Mark Cuban. Hopefully we'll tag him in our credits. Hopefully he'll respond.
There you go.
And if you take me along, I'll just sit there, listen in.
Absolutely.
With that said, if you had to choose what's your favorite meal of the day, what's the most important for you?
Dinner. I mean, chicken parm. That's it. That's the most important meal.
If you could play a professional sport, which would it be?
Football.
Team? What was the team?
Raiders. Ugh, terrible, but Raiders.
It's okay. I'm a Cowboys fan, so I suffer with you all the time.
Yeah.
So last question. If you could say three things that help to make a better person, a better giver, what do you think they are?
Three things to make a person. I mean, I think it's all about authenticity. Yeah. Being authentic, being genuine, and being passionate.
And with that said, Andrew Forman, thank you so much for being on with me today. It's been a pleasure having this conversation. And I can't wait to share everything that GIVZ has shared with us. We'll be dropping all of his handles at the bottom. If you want to say anything to the audience before we go.
That's it. Thanks so much. I really appreciate you having me on. This was fun.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.